Honorable Shri Justice Dheeraj Singh Thakur, the Chief Justice of the Andhra Pradesh High Court, and all the Honorable Judges of the Andhra High Court present here. Shri Amalpati Srinivasan Garu, the Learned Advocate General for State of Andhra Pradesh, the Learned Additional Solicitor General for Union of India, Shri K. Chidambaram, the President of the Andhra Pradesh High Court Bar Association, all the other office bearers of the association, the senior government officials, the collector, the SP, the learned district judge of the district, and all the members from the district judiciary, the senior advocates, members of the bar, and friends. It's a matter of great pleasure for me to be here to speak with you on the successful journey of the Indian Constitution for the last 75 years. It's a matter of great coincidence that after I took oath as the 52nd Chief Justice of India, the first function that I attended was at my native place, Amravati, and it was graced by my esteemed senior colleague and one of the greatest sons of the Andhra Pradesh, Chief Justice Ramna, who, without being invited, was kind enough to come all the way to Amravati to bless me. And now, before I end my journey as the Chief Justice of India, in a couple of days, the last function that I am attending is again at Amravati. So the journey which begins at Amravati will be ending at Amravati. Both the Amravatis have a great historical significance. Our Amravati in Maharashtra is known as Indrapuri, the land of Indra, and similarly I think the Indrapuri here is also, Amravati here is also known as the land of Indra. I'm really grateful to the Honorable Chief Minister, the Honorable Chief Justice of the High Court, and the members of the association, the President of the association, for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to speak with you on the 75-year journey of the Indian Constitution. The subject that I've been given to speak is India and the living Constitution at 75 years. As all of us know that, as the Honorable Chief Justice referred to, after the Constituent Assembly was constituted, the Objectives Resolution was placed before the Constituent Assembly on 9th of December 1946. It was presented by the then Prime Minister of the interim government, Honorable Shri Jawaharlal Nehru. Dr. Ambedkar, who was merely a member of the Constituent Assembly, was called upon to address by the President of the Constituent Assembly, Shri Rajendra Babu, within 4 days, that is on 13th of December 1946. Dr. Ambedkar said that he was not ready to speak because, going by seniority, his turn would have come much later. But since he was called upon, he said he will share his views. And Dr. Ambedkar said that no doubt that the Objectives Resolution as presented by the Jawaharlal Nehru is pragmatic, but he said it is lacking of two basic things. Dr. Ambedkar said that the Objective Resolutions provides for the rights, but it doesn't provide for remedy. And he said that rights without remedy are meaningless. And therefore we find that the very foundation of Article 32 in the Constitution of India, which enables every citizen to knock the doors of the Supreme Court of breach of fundamental rights, finds its place in the first address made by Dr. Ambedkar before the Constituent Assembly. Likewise, he said that coming from Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, and who represents the Congress ideology, he said that there is nothing in the Objectives Resolution which provided for the social and economic equality. And therefore we find that the directive principles of the Indian Constitution, Part 4 of the Indian Constitution, which provides for directive principles, which is an instrument to achieve social and economic justice, also finds place in the Constitutional Assembly, in the Constitution. As all of us know that our Constitution stands on the 4 pillars of justice, liberty, equality and fraternity. The Constitutional Assembly put in Herculean labors for drafting the Constitution. 2 of the speeches of Dr. Ambedkar, the first one on 4th of November 1948, wherein he presented a draft Constitution to the Constitutional Assembly, and the last one on the 25th of November 1949, wherein he replied the debates on the draft Constitution, are, I think, most important speeches which every student of law should read. And as the Honorable Chief Minister said that he is a student, I am also a student of law, because I always consider that whenever a judge or a lawyer considers that he has now learned everything, that is the end of a career as a lawyer or as a judge. And therefore, as a student of law, we must reflect upon the Constituent Assembly debates, which went on for almost a period of 2 years and more, to understand what is the constitutional philosophy behind our Constitution. As the Honorable Chief Minister said that Dr. Ambedkar always considered, or rather for every citizen, the nation must be first. And Dr. Ambedkar in his first speech on 13th of December said that whenever the destinies of the nation are involved, the destinies of the individuals, the destinies of the ideologies, the destinies of the leaders, the destinies of the political parties are totally irrelevant, and what is most important is the destiny of the nation. And therefore, in the heart of Dr. Ambedkar, it was India as a nation which was the most important. Coming to the main subject, that India and the living Indian Constitution at 75 years. Dr. Ambedkar always considered that a constitution cannot be a static document. It has to be evolving, it has to be organic and a living document. And therefore, the Article 368 provides for the Constitution, for the amendment of the Constitution. There was criticism on Dr. Ambedkar that on one hand he was criticized that the powers to amend the Constitution are too liberal, and on the other hand it was criticized that some of the amendments which require ratification by 2/3 of the states, half of the states and 2/3 majority of the parliament were too strong, and it was difficult to achieve an amendment in this manner. He said that wherever the amendments were necessary for answering the socio-economic challenges, the Constitution could be amended in a simpler way. But however, wherever a foundation of the Constitution, like the independence of judiciary, the federal structure, or the other important aspects are concerned, the power to amend the Constitution could not be simple, and therefore it was necessary that some more stringent conditions were required for amending the Constitution. As we see that we gave our Constitution to ourselves on the 26th of November 1949, and which came into effect from 26th of January 1950. The apprehensions as expressed by Dr. Ambedkar came to be true within a short period. In 1950, immediately after the Constitution came, the state of Tamil Nadu then the state of Madras had issued a government order providing for reservation for the scheduled caste and scheduled caste. The same came to be challenged before the Madras High Court on the ground that it was contrary violation of Article 14. The said challenge was upheld by the Madras High Court. It was carried before the Supreme Court in a Constitution bench judgment. And in the celebrated judgment of Champakaran versus the state of Madras, the Supreme Court upheld the judgment of the Madras High Court and held the provision of reservation to be unconstitutional. And therefore we find that in the very first amendment in 1951, the amendment which was moved by none else than Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, Article 15 was amended so as to provide for reservation for the backward classes. Similarly, between 1946 to 1950, various states, in order to provide for agrarian reforms like the Ceilings Act, like the Agricultural Tenancy Acts, had enacted various laws. Those laws were challenged. Some of the high courts upheld the validity of the laws. Some of the high courts negated the validity of the said enactments. And therefore, in order to bring about clarity, the same amendment also inserted Article 31A and 31B so as to provide for the agrarian reforms. The issue with regard to amendment of the Constitution came to be considered by the Supreme Court as early as in Shankari Prasad, to which the learned Chief Justice has referred to. And by a unanimous verdict, the 5 judges held that the Parliament's power to amend the Constitution cannot be restrained. It was held that if the Parliament, in order to answer the socio-economic challenges faced by the subsequent generations, is restricted for amending the Constitution, then the Constitution would not be a static or would not be a living document, and it will be a static document. That was subsequently considered in Sajjan Singh, by virtue of 3-2, the power of the Constitution, power of the Parliament to amend the Constitution came to be upheld. But the seats of dissent were sowed in the very same judgment. Justice Hidayatullah said that to hold that the Parliament's power to amend the Constitution are unbridled, and they can even amend the Constitution to take away the fundamental rights, I would require stronger reasons than the ones given in Shankari Prasad. Justice Mudolkar, he said that if the power to amend the Constitution is to be construed as taking away the basic features of the Constitution, then the word amend will have no importance and it will amount to changing the Constitution. And therefore we find that the concept of basic structure as evolved in Keshavanand Bharati has its roots in the case of Sajjan Singh. Subsequently, the 9 judges in Golaknath held that the powers of the Parliament to amend the Constitution were restricted and it could not amend the Constitution in a manner it takes away the fundamental rights of the citizens. That gave rise to the 24th, 25th and 26th Amendment, by which various articles were either inserted or amended so as to carry forward the goal of the Indian Constitution of achieving social and economic justice. The same came to be challenged in the Keshavanand Bharati, wherein the Supreme Court, for the first and so far for the last time, sat in a combination of 13 judges. Insofar as the power to amend the Constitution is concerned, the court was virtually split by 6-6. 6 judges took a view that the powers of the Parliament to amend the Constitution are unbridled and the Parliament by majority can amend the Constitution in any manner. However, the 6 judges took a view that the Parliament's power to amend the Constitution are restricted and it cannot amend the Constitution to take away the fundamental rights guaranteed to the citizen. It is only the view of Justice H.R. Khanna, partly accepted by 6 on one hand and partly accepted by 6 on the other hand, which is now the view in Keshavanand Bharati. Justice Khanna held that though the Parliament can amend the power even to take away the fundamental rights, it cannot amend the Constitution in a manner in which it takes away the basic structures of the Constitution. And therefore, the concept of basic future as found in Sajjan Singh, which was amplified as basic structure in Keshavanand Bharati, is what is the law which holds the field. Various principles like the federal structure of the Constitution, the separation of 3 wings, the executive, the judiciary, and the executive, judiciary, and the legislature, the independence of judiciary, the supremacy of the Constitution were held to be the basic structures which were subsequently evolved in various judgments, including the one in S.R. Bommai. As has been observed by the Honorable Chief Minister, it is all the 3 wings of the Constitution, that is, the legislature, the executive, the judiciary, which are enjoined upon to carry forward the mandate of the Constitution to bring in social and economic justice. One of the greatest weapons for promoting the social and economic justice as envisioned by Dr. Ambedkar was Part 4, that is the directive principles. And though we see that from 1950 to 1973, the tilt of the courts was always that wherever a conflict arose between the directive principles and the fundamental rights, the supremacy of the fundamental rights was always recognized. It was felt that wherever there is a conflict between the directive principles and the fundamental rights, the directive principles will have to give its way to the fundamental rights. It is for the first time in Keshavanand Bharati that this conflict was resolved. Though the court was virtually split on the question of Parliament's power to amend the Constitution, it was unanimous to hold that the directive principles and fundamental rights together and together alone are the soul of the Constitution. And therefore, Keshavanand Bharati held that the fundamental rights as well as the directive principles are together are necessary for progress of the nation. It was held that fundamental rights are those rights which are necessary for a human being, for a citizen to live a dignified life as a human being. Whereas the directive principles were the principles which govern the state, the legislature, and they guide them in order to enact the laws and take steps to further the promise of economic and social justice. Some of the honorable judges also held that the courts are also states within the